2015-2019, call it to order. I'd like to begin with the invocation. Missionary Harrelson, 4th Ward Commissioner, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by our City Manager, Dr. Watson.
Lord, we thank you for your loving kindness. We thank you for your tender mercy. Bless each and every one that's here on tonight in a special way. Let this meeting be a reductive meeting. In the name of Jesus we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Adams.
Present.
Commissioner Harrelson.
Present.
Commissioner Henderson. Here. Commissioner Henry.
Present.
Commissioner Isom.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats. Commissioner Singleton.
Present.
Mayor Muhammad.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Is there approval for the regular minutes of April?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Adams, supported by Commissioner Henderson. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Isom.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson.
Yes.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Mayor Muhammad.
Yes.
Motion carries, Your Honor.
Is there a motion for the approval of accounts payable listing? Motion made by Commissioner Henderson, supported by Commissioner Isom. Madam Clerk. Oh, pardon me, discussion. Chair recognizes Commissioner Singleton.
Yes, it's a couple of them. The one for, I think, Plant Moran, I'll put it about 70645. Is that like a monthly fee? I kind of noticed kind of a rise up due to absence of finance director, taking on more duties.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner Singleton, when the finance director, Mr. Clark, what we were doing was that Ms. Hildebrand was not being here as much. And because of the absence of, she has done more duties, so that is a charge.
Meeks Construction, LLC, 9,000. Particular project.
That is a part of the lead pilot grant that we got from the state of Michigan. They were one of the contractors that is doing work on investigation as well as replacement of any lead services that may be going to a property owner's home, and it's covered under a grant from the state of Michigan.
That's one I have. Is the one for Miss Story for 5,000 or something. That I'm trying to get whether is that a firm fee or is that a employee fee?
Mr. Manager.
That is the contract amount spread out over 12 months for Ms. Story. So that is her monthly payment.
Is that to the firm?
That is to her. That is to Ms. Story.
Are there any other council persons that would have questions regarding the accounts payable listing? Carry none, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
No.
Commissioner Singleton.
Yes.
Commissioner Isom.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Muhammad.
Yes.
Motion carries, Your Honor.
We'd like to move to the citizens' comments due to the fact that our county commissioner, Mamie Yarborough, is absent tonight. She is out of the country at this time.
Ms.
So-
Emma Carr.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm here to talk about my plant of the month, which is the Peace Lily, scientific name, Spathiphyllum spathiphyllum. And I thought of it being unique. It's mostly found in Southeastern Asia. And I thought of it being a peace lily to present this month because of Easter. It's not an Easter lily, but it is a lily. And I thought the personality of our clerk being a peacefulness about her, I wanted to present her with this tonight. And so she's one that is not recognized, but works very hard all the time. She does. And so we want to applaud her. Some of the other things that is concerning me too is that we are definitely focusing in on cleaning up our city. This is not like us. We were once people that cleaned up behind masses, children, and everybody else.
Right,
So I have to tell it like it is.
right.
And now that we have a chance or a choice is to clean up behind ourselves, our children, and teach them. It's time for us to stand up and do what is right.
Right.
So I'm ready to work and push forward, and I have no problem in speaking my mind, as most of you know. And so I'm out to speak my mind as to us getting ourselves together and taking care of our own business. Our business is to take care of Benton Harbor. This is a part of our culture. It's cleaning, managing our children. Now our children running rapid. We're not taking care of dumping in places like that. It's time for us to stop it and be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Please register.
Mr. Alex Little.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission members. I wanted to take this opportunity to come this evening. I was out of town last week. I understand that Mr. Purvis came over and had some statements to make, and I thought I would come and straighten out.
Speaking to the
Right.
microphone,
All
please.
right. He talked about cheap stuff, Korean tires at $114 and a Buy America policy. Since that time, I have sent a copy of the Buy America policy, which is written in our procurement policy that was accepted and approved by our board person and by the Federal Transit Authority. It primarily pertains to large equipment purchases of steel and other products of that nature. Doesn't deal with things like tires. And the fact is that I didn't even bother to double check whether they were Korean tires or not. It didn't matter. The fact is that when I got there, the auditors, when they completed the audit, sent a letter from their manager saying that we had overspent for 3 years in a row. My objective was to get our costs down and under control. The same tires that we were paying $174 for, we could have gotten a heck of a lot cheaper. The difference with what I did is went and looked at what kind of tires we should have on our buses. Then I wrote a letter to Discount Tire, M&W Tire, to the new one there and several others, and asked them to give me a price for those tires. I also requested in that they also give us a price for disposing of the tires that were starting to stack up over there size. And we wound up giving the price to one of the lower ones that was able to meet our requirements. Talked about the $12,000 building maintenance. There was no building maintenance. I had watched for a couple of months to see what the person was doing. They were coming over, going from a ladder. Sometimes they weren't even going up. But I'm sure all of you have heating and cooling systems. Basically what we do in business as well as residential. You have a spring, summer changeover when you change the filters and lubricate them and everything, and you have a fall, winter one. And that's what I started doing there instead of paying somebody $12,000 a month to do nothing. And as to the same people came to me at one point and told me there was an urgent need for us to spend $16,000 to replace the unit we had up there. When I told them that we would have to have bids from different companies and they would all have to go up there and take a look at it to see what they needed, they suddenly came back and told us it was a mistake. We were okay, we didn't need one. This $30,000 under the table nonsense was, that reminded me somewhat of when I first came in and was working for the city. The city had financial problems. My salary at that time was $63,000. When I created your first DDA and tax increment finance district, in order to help the city, I took that $63,000, took $50,000 out of general fund and took half of the rest of it out of both DDA and Tiffany. And I had one commissioner running around and I was writing myself checks and I was getting free checks and all that kind of nonsense. Well, in this case, I came in, could I beg the indulgence of the commission for a few more minutes?
Granted.
All right. When I started over there, I accepted that job in the first part of March, and at that time, I believe you had 3 people active on the board. Ms. Kennard, Ms. Andrews, and Commissioner Henry. There was a 4th person, but I never met them because they never came to a meeting, and that's who I think was eventually replaced. But in an effort to try and help the organization financially, I agreed to start at $50,000 until Bill retired and went off payroll. And said that as soon as that happened, I would request a full salary. Now, Bill was making about $63,000 or $64,000. TJ was making about $55,000. I don't know what they expected I was going to do. I've been making a heck of a lot more money than any of them everywhere I've been for the last 10, 15 years. But nevertheless, it was no under-the-table raise or anything. It wasn't a raise at all. He retired in December, and I took the full position in January. And I produced documentation to him, both my contract, which was also signed by Bill, as well as the commissioner, and my salary changed in January when I took on the full role. This business about sending people home, got 5 brand new buses, and I don't know what motivated him to try and play these kind of games, but that man knows what the situation was. Those buses came in October. We were putting bids out to get new cameras and so forth because we didn't have enough cameras going to buses, and I was not going to put those new buses on the street without radios and cameras and things. I mean, these new $90,000 buses and all the liability attached to them, you don't put them out there without having the necessary equipment on them. So for that reason, that's why they were sitting until later on. And all of you know the federal shutdown came shortly after. We couldn't get any money. I don't think you could get any money from HUD or anywhere, and so we had to do what we had to do to get through there. It's business about all employees hated me. I doubt it, but maybe. But I know one thing, I think they respected me because I asked them to do what I did, not just what I said. I came to work every day. That's what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to get out there and pick our people up on time, stop leaving poor old ladies standing and sitting in the cold for 2.5 hours and so forth. So I just wanted to straighten those things out. I had sent to you all a copy of the FTA Triennial review results. They had 17 different areas that we had to correct in order to stay in business. One of them was putting a procurement plan in place, a maintenance plan in place. The audit from the previous year had not been filed either by the auditors or by Bill. We got dinged for it in our audit. This time, we were moving to get this stuff done. So, I just wanted to straighten those things out, because there were a lot of other things that I got done over there for the organization, such as, for the rest of the year, you won't pay more than $1.89 a gallon for gas, because I locked in a contract at that price for the next 46,000 gallons or the rest of the year, whichever is first. So, we had a PC trans system that was supposed to handle automated dispatch. The people told me when they installed that system, they had to dummy the system down in order to fit the way the people were working there, because they didn't want to learn how to do it properly. And when I put trackers in these buses so we could see where they are, and people couldn't hide out behind buildings anymore and smoke and talk and cell phone and whatnot, and then we were moving to put this automated system in with tablets in every bus that would send them to them. It was going to get the system working the way it was supposed to, so that we would pick people up on time and be able to handle the service that we were supposed to provide. With that, I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Mr. Little, you should tell the truth and stop.
Point of order,
He's lying. I'm telling you, we got documentation. And
point of order, Ms. Kennard,
he
please.
didn't come before the board.
Point of order.
Only one meter signed for him.
Point of order.
That was not known until after it was done.
My original contract was on
This is
this.
not the place for, this is not a dollar
Stop
ride
lying
board
on Mr.
meeting.
Curtis.
Good evening. In honor
Did you
of
register
Mayor.
with the city clerk?
I put my name on it. Do I need to go there first? I'm sorry.
Ms. Juanita Lewis.
Good evening. Again, in honor of Mayor Marcus Muhammad and all the commissioners and those who are in their respective places. Again, my name is Juanita Lewis, and I just have one thing that I want to discuss, and you've probably been discussing this from so long ago, or I'm not sure, but it's about the roads. I live at 1273 Broadway, and on Broadway Street, it is so raggedy, and it's just awful, and it's like, you could just tear your car up on that street. And I'm sure they got other streets, but I'm concerned about that area because that's where I reside at. So my question is, the taxes that we're going to be paying now that they want residents to pay taxes, is that to cover the roads? And if so, when is this going to happen? And who's in charge of getting those roads taken care of? That is my concern this evening.
I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in the citizens' comments or public participation. This brings us to our public hearing for the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund and State Revolving Loan Project Plan. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. And for those representatives who are here to present, you have the floor.
My name is Tricia Bolson. I'm with Abbott Marsh. This is Daniel Dombas. We're going to talk about the Drinking Water Revolving Fund and State Revolving Fund loan project plans that are out for public review. Just to give you some background, this is a culmination of 3 studies that the city and Marsh have been working on since 2014. There's the Stormwater and Wastewater Asset Management Plan, Water Reliability Study, and the Water Asset Management Plan. These studies assessed the city's infrastructure assets and gave them a criticality score based on 2 factors: probability of factor, which took into account age and condition, and consequence of failure, which is impact on the community, such as the cost of replacement, risk for public health, or impacts on the environment. So these studies have identified needs, and now the city is seeking assistance with implementing projects. The application for these low interest loans through Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, the Drinking Water Revolving Fund funds drinking water infrastructure improvements, and the State Revolving Fund is for sanitary sewer improvements.
Where? I'm trying to keep up.
She's just doing a presentation.
I'm kind of summarizing what's in there. Yes. So the loans will help fund water and sanitary sewer infrastructure improvements, as well as any roadway or sidewalks that would be over those infrastructure pipes. The local funds will cover ineligible expenses such as drainage or remaining roadway. When you think about sanitary pipe under the road, these programs will only fund a percentage of the roadway overlying that pipe. So we've selected projects based on priority from those reports, but also to maximize available financing. So we looked for areas of town where your water and your sanitary sewer are both high criticality and coincident to each other. So if you look at the pie chart, we're showing 66% of the work being funded by these 2 loan programs, and then that gray piece is the piece we're trying to get as small as possible. The 34% would come from local funding. So what is the need for these projects? The water and sanitary sewer infrastructure dates to the early 1900s. Facilities are operating beyond their useful lives, and there's a high probability of failure and service disruption. The aging and undersized water mains lead to inadequate water pressure and poor water quality. And then any lead service lines will be replaced in conjunction with water main work due to the new state legislation. And then aging sewer pipes require additional repair and cleaning and increase in maintenance cost. It can compromise roadway and overlying utilities and lead to infiltration where water can leak into the sanitary sewer system. The water tower is also part of this project. We're proposing structural and coating repairs and access and safety improvements. So where are the projects located? We have this Pipestone corridor, the yellow and green, orange and red area, Vineyard, Highland, Wall Street, Maple Street, and Pipestone all the way from Main to Vineyard. And then we have a Benton and Territorial corridor area. To the east is a blue line. And then to the north we have Stevens Street from Wakanda to Riverside proposed, the water tower at Britton and 8th. And then the water plant was originally proposed in the project plan that went out to the public. We've eliminated that from the project plan. New information came to us that a lot of the work, almost $1 million of work that was proposed in the water asset management plan, city staff have already taken care of. So that's reflected. We'll talk about financing later. The overall cost of the project will be a little bit lower. So I want to talk about the Pipestone Street corridor. There is an interceptor that runs down Pipestone Street, and this, it's hard to see, but this purple area, all of this residential area flows through that corridor, that project area that we're looking at, on its way to the wastewater treatment plant. So when you talk about consequence of failure, catastrophic failure in that purple project area to the north, you know, it's potential that all of these people who live south of that point could be impacted. And then with Benton Street, similarly, this green area, all of these sanitary sewers flow through that north outlet into the ravine interceptor. And then Dan is going to talk about the alternatives for project work and financing.
Thank you, Trish. When we look at proposing work on any one of our infrastructure systems, we look at three major alternatives. There's a no action alternative that says, well, what happens if we just let it go? In that case, we know that we have infrastructure here in Benton Harbor that dates back to the early 1900s and sometimes even earlier than that. That infrastructure is aged out, it's past its useful life. In the situation that we see with our these corridors on Pipestone and again on Benton and Highland, we have trunk line sewers that serve a lot of other areas, and the idea that we're going to let that go and potentially fail would impact, as we showed in those previous slides, a good portion of the city. So really, it's not feasible to consider not doing anything about the infrastructure in Benton Harbor. We need to do something. We need to address the risk of failure and improve these old aging systems, as well as address any capacity issues in terms of the flow that allows us to, our domestic needs for taking baths, doing laundry and that kind of thing, as well as protecting our homes from risks such as fire. The drinking water system also furnishes fire flows to our first responders so that they can adequately address emergency situations that arise. And the idea of taking no action really does not address those critical needs for the public. So once we decided that we need to do something, we have two options thereafter. One being an improvement. What can we do to repair, rehabilitate our existing infrastructure? Also, or do we have to go ahead and replace it? So that gets into cost analyses to say, well, what is the way we can make our money go the furthest? In the case of water storage, we have a 650,000 gallon water tower at the intersection of Britton and 8th, and there was a study done on this tower several years ago now, but that recommended improvements to the paint, the coatings to protect and preserve those materials, as well as undertaking structural repairs and safety improvements so that the folks who are working on that tower have the adequate fall protection and accessibility so that they can get where they need to get to keep things working. With those improvements, the existing tower still has some life. And the cost estimate that was produced for those tower repairs came in at $499,000 or $499,800. By contrast, if that were to be replaced, because we need to maintain the existing tower in service, you'd have to locate a candidate property for a new tower, purchase that, prepare it, and then construct a new tower. Those costs were estimated at roughly $5 million. Given the fact that we still have some life that we can, through proper maintenance and repair of existing facilities, we determined that it was most cost effective to go ahead and undertake that repair and rehabilitation work on the existing tower and make sure we can get all useful life that facility has for us. When it comes to the distribution, now we're talking about the pipes underground, the fire hydrants, and the water services to our homes. The analysis was a little bit different. Because of the fact that these are a closed system, the water pipes themselves, it's not practical to go in and line or rehabilitate these pipes the way it is for some sewers. We can do that actual rehabilitation where we go in and without even digging, we can line those sewers. However, with water distribution, because it's a closed system, because we have to pressure test, clean, chlorinate, and certify that those water services, or water mains rather, and services are clean and ready to drink from, it's really the replacement is the only viable option there. That cost for replacement of the distribution system within these project areas came in at $3,966,019.
The other portion of the project, we showed you the pie chart earlier, they had the blue for the water and the green for the sanitary. The other portion of this project is the sanitary wastewater system. Again, no action. Well, we have 100-year-old pipes underground with, that are sagging, have alignment defects, and we actually go inside these pipes and we watch hours of video of the interior of these pipes to see what condition they're in. It's very entertaining watching. Unfortunately, we have to go through, but it's very educational as to how things are going on underground and where deterioration is going on that we need to address. The idea that we're going to not do anything is really not a viable option for us. After that, we look at whether or not we need to repair or replace those facilities. And here we look at what kind of issues we have. So we go down each pipe and look at the nature of the deterioration, where we have what we're seeing along our streets here in Benton Harbor. Our rehabilitation, would not necessarily address the types of issues that we have. Alignment defects, and then we start to see voids outside the pipe where we have broken pipe, and you can see from within the pipe, you can see a void outside the pipe. It's hard to know how far that void could potentially go. We know that sometimes pavement can bridge over those voids a long time, and suddenly we have a sinkhole developed. I think there was one recently on, I believe it was Highland, even last fall maybe, that opened up with a school bus. In those cases, reconstruction and replacement of those pipes allows us to dig them up, replace them, number one, but also then recompact all that material that is supporting the road, but also supporting your other utilities, where you have these sanitary sewers that are underlying your water main and your storm sewers. If a void opens up, it could potentially compromise those overlying utilities as well. In this case, reconstruction was the selected alternative for addressing those types of issues that we saw in the system. Now, the next thing we look at is we identify what needs to be done to improve our infrastructure, is we look at the impact of that. First of all, replacing infrastructure has a positive impact. There'll be fewer sewer backups, fewer overflows, fewer maintenance issues related to age and condition for our staff to have to address. There's also decreased risk of issues related to health as we improve our water quality with new pipes, removing those lead surfaces that we've heard so much about in the news. There's also the ability to increase the capacity and pressures and flows so that we get better level of service to our public, as well as improving the safety, as I mentioned earlier, with those fire flows. Getting higher flows to the fire hydrants allows us to combat fire issues that come up from time to time. In the short term, during those construction projects, there are some issues that we have to address. Obviously, construction, there's noise-related issues that we need to circumvent or mitigate. One of the ways we do those, obviously, all the equipment nowadays has mufflers, and they're the sound attenuated. We also work with the local municipality to limit the work hours, so that they're not working at off hours that would cause a nuisance to people in their homes, at church or at school, that kind of thing. So we also limit weekend hours to avoid weekend work as much as possible, though sometimes some hours on Saturday are appropriate to help facilitate and move that project along. Dust, we obviously know that construction, pardon our dust, is a common thing we see from time to time, but we mitigate dust through use of soil erosion practices that keep the material from washing off site into our storm drains. We also, if it's necessary, use water or what we call dust palliatives to actually calm down and keep the dust under control. Our the emissions from the vehicles and equipment that are used in construction are federally regulated. such that, they're in compliance with emission standards. And the dreaded roadway closure and detours and those kind of things, we work with the municipality to mitigate and keep those roads accessible for local residents, keep them passable for emergency services, and we make sure that any detours that we have to post are signed well so that people know how to get to and from their homes and destinations. The work that we're proposing in this plan for the city of Benton Harbor is primarily located within existing developed street rights of way. This program is used by many municipalities and other local government units around the state of Michigan. In some cases, they're looking to develop maybe a new wastewater plant on a new piece of property. In those cases, there may be issues of wetlands and those kinds of environmental resources that would be impacted by this kind of work. However, in our situation, we're talking about going in and reconstructing a street or utilities that are already there. So those types of impacts don't really come into play here for the work that we're proposing. The costs of these projects, as we know, there's a lot of work to be done in Benton Harbor. The different project plans that we've brought to the commission over the past several years with the storm and wastewater asset management plan and the water asset management plan, as well as the water reliability study, have outlined a lot of need there. The projects that we've put forward are, again, as Trish mentioned earlier, are those projects that scored the highest in terms of their risk of failure as well as their consequence of failure. They also were the projects that were lined up together so that we could maximize the use of these financing mechanisms to help stretch dollars as far as they can go. Total cost of projects that we've outlined in this plan total to $14,518,273. Of that, DWRF, that is the Drinking Water Revolving Fund portion, totals $4,465,819. And that's broken down into, again, the water storage that we talked about, the water tower at $499,800, and the water distribution that we mentioned previously, the water mains, the hydrants and the services and that kind of thing, as well as the portions of the streets and walks that are directly over top. That totals to $3,966,019. Based on the financing mechanism, that would result in an expected debt repayment of $213,368 per year over 30 years. The SRF eligible cost for that that's for the wastewater sewers, totals to $5,076,698 for the collection system improvements. And that debt repayment over the 30-year life of that loan is estimated at $242,554. Now, one of the things that an aspect of this program, there is a possibility of receiving some principal loan forgiveness due to the community's disadvantaged status, so which would potentially reduce the amount of those repayments. So we're looking for every avenue that we can leverage to help stretch the city's dollars as far as they can go. The previous plans that were submitted in 2017 and approved by the commission discussed some rate increases that would raise enough funds to repay this additional debt repayment. 2017 Water Asset Management Plan proposed some rate increases phased in over a few years to create the necessary revenue to service that debt, as well as the Storm and Wastewater Asset Management Plan. There were some rate increases associated with those plans as well to cover the wastewater portion and the stormwater portion of the projects. These numbers have changed slightly from the numbers that were presented and that we had to post a month ago, chiefly due to the work that's already been undertaken by the city staff. We've seen the water portion, the drinking water portion that number has come down significantly. Well, that's all I have for you. If there's any questions or comments.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Henderson.
Yes, thank you for the presentation of a lot of information. Could you explain to me the difference between a closed system and an open system, and what system that you're putting in a new system?
Okay.
So which system are you putting in with the pipes?
Well, the water main of all, what we have today is a closed system. So meaning when we place a water main, when we connect it and tie it in, it is closed to the environment so that it cannot become contaminated with bacteria or any other materials. So whereas a storm sewer, say, or a wastewater sewer, those are an open system wherein you can access them via a manhole. They're not pressure tight. So where one of those storm sewers, say, we could go in and look at it and say, oh man, there's a structural defect along this pipe segment, and this particular structural issue, hey, we can go in and line this sewer with our technology that we have available today in order to address that issue. Water main, you wouldn't be able to open it up and look inside the way that you can with a sewer. So that's the distinction I'm making there between a closed and open system.
So we would be replacing some of ours with that other system?
I chiefly make the distinction between like the sewers and the water main, just to highlight the fact that rehabilitation, a lining of a water main is not really something that's feasible to do.
Okay. One other question is, so you talked about the water tower and the cost of $499,800 for repairs, and you said that that money is enough to keep it going for a while. At what point, and what will be the cost? Well, you talked about the cost. At what point would we have to replace that? Because at some point, it sounds like we would have to replace it. When would that be? Is that 10 years, 5 years?
Based on the previous reports, that's about 20 years. They're looking at a 20-year horizon to stretch the existing water tower that long.
So these repairs will last for another 20 years?
That's the,
we'll
continue, I think the...
you came in, you said this is what we need to do, so...
Yeah, and most of the structural repairs for the water tower, yes. The coating system, the paints that we put on these water towers are continually evaluated to make sure they're weathering, and we're continuing to stay on top of them to make sure that we're not seeing any advanced corrosion.
As long as it's being maintained, is what you're saying, we should be able to go another 20 years, but definitely in 20 years, we will be replacing that water tower.
That's the horizon that was projected, yes.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Large Adams.
Thank you. First off, I'd like documentation of what the gentleman said that we passed in 2017.
The storm and wastewater asset management plans, as well as the water asset management plans and water liabilities.
City manager wise, and I appreciate it. This kind of sort of reminds me of the project with the water plant. My question is, now that this has come up, is this something that's totally separate from what Avonmarsh has put forth in the form of fixing the streets with income tax? Or are they one of the same, we're trying to work this thing together?
There's aspects of it that would work together, though the income tax for street and utility improvements, I believe that's a city, I don't think Avonmarsh necessarily put that forward.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is, and I want this community to understand, a lot of the things that has taken place with Harbor Shores and stuff, the community had to do something to start gaining a tax base, because these type of things, this community were going to incur, sitting on an over 150-year infrastructure. and potholes and stuff that are constantly occurring because America is crumbling. But what I don't hear is the jobs that need to be created, the concrete that needs to be recycled and reused. I mean, all of that stuff falls into play because I just can't sit back and keep making decisions and taxing the poor. But somebody got to pay for it. But we need to create some jobs in the midst of all this. Not just the doers getting paid. We need some training and some other stuff going on that should have been taking place 20 years ago that I've been singing as a choir all by myself and to Avonmarsh, amongst some others. Now I'm hoping that we are mapping and that we have been doing some mapping of the past year at least of what has been going on within the city that can be found on the city's website of what projects has taken place. If we rebuild in Benton Harbor, those are things that need to be documented, and the taxpayers need to know where their tax dollars are working and on what street.
I will say to the audience, it is a government meeting, so it's not like, a church where it's like, go ahead, teach, it's not really that kind of, I do appreciate your passion and involvement, but we can channel it in another way. Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Henderson.
I just have a quick question, it's maybe to the city manager. What is the new amount? As he stated, there was some that was removed. What is the new amount of the cost of this project in reference to the drinking water?
It's what you see it's what you see on the slide.
No, he said that, you told us that the information that you gave us was different.
Previously, that amount has come down
Right.
relative and related to the work that's been undertaken already.
So what does that cost?
The cost incurred.
No, the new amount.
What you see.
Okay.
What you see up there.
You want me to tell you what the other amount is?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tricia.
Just trying to find I have the, oh wait, this is the new version. I don't have the one that's public.
The manager.
Commissioner Henderson, that number has been reduced essentially by $1 million. So that number was about $5.5 million. So it's come down significantly since that initially came out.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I do also concur with my constituents about the necessity in all these things. I didn't know that our water was in that bad a shape. I would like a list to know what every lead line is at. We just said that we have citizens drinking from lead lines, and in order for us to, I think we said that. The other thing is 2.0 right here, page 6, going out to Kojic Village, which is township, which we own the property. But if you go beyond anywhere around that, the township owns that. I just, and it says, it also goes Crystal Avenue and Euclid Avenue. I know we sold a portion of that via the EFM. Emergency managers sold a lot of those lines to the township. But my question becomes, is it cost effective for us to maintain just that water supply going there, or let it go to the township, or should we try to do something different? Because if we're trying to improve things going out to the township, I would rather improve that going into the city. That does say right here, territorial road between Crystal Avenue and Euclid, which if you do go to...
Right, I know that, I know there's been...
I'm sorry. I know you are used to doing that. but when somebody has the floor, then, when I finish, then you can answer every question I got.
I apologize.
No, you're all right. All right. So when you start at Crystal, right there, that's been township, police department, everything. Then when you come back towards Euclid, all of that is considered the township. We inherited that piece of property. There was legislation passed and all that, so we can get there, but most of that is township. I want to know the price or the cost just for that, and how long will it take us to make that money back? Because that is township. It's city property by jurisdiction, but by location, it's township property. So if it's more cost effective for us to do what Joe Harris did and give them, because at that point they owed us money, but somehow Joe Harris wiped the books clean and we ended up paying them money. But how much is it gonna cost us to fix what's going on out there? And also, again, I wanna know, because I heard the word lead, I want to know how many lead lines that we have, because I believe probably about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, we did have a grant that came through here to replace some lead lines. I want to know how many lead lines were replaced via the grant, and how many more lead lines out there that we got to change out, because I think that's a state of emergency right there if you have people now drinking out of lead pipes. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats, just to let, I think Mr. Dombas alluded to, one of the things that the state of Michigan enacted for all municipalities in the state of Michigan as of January 1 was that no longer could we just be concerned about the line that came from the water main to the property line. The state has now mandated that every piece of the line, from the water main to the water meter inside of the home, is now the responsibility of the municipality. It was never documented on the city side what is beyond the property line into the home, because prior to January 1, that responsibility was the property owners. So now what we have to do now, as a part of what we got a grant for, is to understand what's on the other side of the property line, which nobody knows. So now what we're getting at right now is getting that information so that we know exactly what we're dealing with, because again, the city will be responsible for all of the service line supplying the home as of January 1, 2019.
Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Is there any way we can get that documentation in writing that as of January 1, that's going to change? I think that, and I'm being honest with you, I'm being honest with the people, I would want to see that from the state, that ruling, and what happened. And I would like to know who has the map of where actually the water lines and sewer lines run. You know, we don't have proper documentation of where the sewer line or the water lines even run. So do we have to go to B&Z, or do we got to go to Meeks Construction, or who has the actual map or blueprint of where the lines run to each home? Because I know there was a grant done for the sewer line when they were smoking the lines from Avonmarsh and had smoke going up through the sewer system to everybody's house to see where the payouts were and everything else. Are you guys the governor of the document? Has not been turned over to the city? How does that work? Because now knowing that, that's a bad thing, you know, we need to fix that. But we've had senior citizens who had to pay for sewer line to the middle of the street, the water line to the middle of the street, and now to find out that it was a municipality responsibility.
As of January 1st.
I would wanna see that documentation.
The city manager is going to get it.
And also, I would love to see if they took it to court and did they make that retroactive? Because if people have been paying for lead lines that they didn't even know they had, was it their fault? Municipality got a grant to replace all lead lines. I say again, the municipality had a grant to replace lead lines. I wanna know how many was replaced under that grant. And I wanna know who all has lead lines. Because obviously, during this presentation, we know who has lead lines. Have we informed the resident that they have lead lines?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I know you arrived a little late.
Have we instructed,
But,
have we told?
I don't think that the presenter,
I heard that.
I don't think the presenter, in that presentation, was addressing lead lines, from the street up into the home. That's why we got the grant from the state as a result of the change in law in order to investigate, to find, along with the testing, what homes have lead content in the drinking water. So it's all compiled, but I'll let the gentleman. Then the other thing, I'm looking on this list here, and I don't see where Crystal and
See it right there on page 6.
I'm talking about the cost here.
Well, it says right there, Crystal Avenue and
There's another page that deals with the cost, and I don't see where Crystal or anything dealing with Kojic is on here, but could you,
So,
right, go ahead, please. No, go ahead.
yes, sir. Handling first the issue of the Kojic Village apartments that was brought up by Mayor Pro Tem. The report states that the city's wastewater collection service area consists of the entire city with the exception of the Kojic Village apartment complex located south of Territorial between Crystal and Euclid Avenue. So I apologize for that there was a
So the Kojic Village isn't,
with the exception of.
You're not that old.
so there's no funding going
that line that feeds them is not being touched.
to Kojic Village.
Not that old.
Just want to clear it up.
Yes, sir. There's no work on that line being proposed as part of this project.
Thank you. Now, as far as the lead lines, can you speak to that?
As far as the lead lines, the identification of lead lines, lead services from the water main to the home, whether it be within the right-of-way or outside the right-of-way. Prior to the legislation that the city manager has retrieved, it had been the practice of public projects to undertake the replacement of water services, including lead services, with new approved and safe drinking water materials to the right of way. At that point, it had been, prior to this legislation being enacted, it had been the policy that on the private property was the responsibility of the homeowner. This new legislation that has been enacted has made the replacement of that lead service all the way to the home, and in some cases inside to a point, has made that a component of these public projects. Having said that, the identification and locating of all these lead services that exist in these municipalities that date back to the early 1900s when lead was a construction material, that has been I'll say, pervasive issue. There are pilot projects that the city is currently undertaking with its staff and other, as was identified in I believe earlier in the agenda this evening, payment to one of the contractors related to a pilot program to look for and identify these lead services. I do not have information pertaining to all the locations of lead service within the city, but I could look up I could go back to our records and see the ones that we're aware of, but the city has more up-to-date information on that than Avonmarsh does.
Thank you.
So they are aware of some lead lines in the city of Benton Harbor.
There are lead services in the city of Benton Harbor, and the city and others are working to identify and replace those.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Trying to get some clarification on the Kojic Village. I know you said our water lines don't supply Kojic Village. And they do. No, my understanding.
They don't.
They don't, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, we don't supply water. Town should supply water to Kojic Village. Yeah. That's, in the presentation, I heard you say something about the possible, maybe some rate increases and things. What would it cost for us to supply water to a place that's in our jurisdiction? I'm sure they use quite a bit of water, and that would probably help offset some of the costs. I think there's a couple other areas that's when they sold the lines that it's Benton Harbor property, but we don't supply the water. Like even at the old Rico plant out there, I understand township supply them water, but that's city property. Even the airport, I think. And so we look at talking about raising costs and things, so that we already strapped for. If we regain those customers, how much would it cost? Would it help offset the cost, or are we way over our head?
The discussion of whether it would be financially viable to then extend water lines to Kojic Village honestly was not something that we were necessarily trying to identify with this report. I guess to clarify that, and I can get back and address. It's an interesting question to think about whether it would be cost effective to extend a water line to capture a customer who would then be paying the system. However, the crux of this report and the funding that we're going after addresses pipes that are failing and in poor condition.
In the 4.4 square miles.
Yes.
Benton Harbor property.
So yes, and the reason and the bringing up the Kojic Village was not done necessarily to confuse the discussion. It was just simply to state that we have the city limits of Benton Harbor, and the city system serves users within those limits, with the exception of Kojic Village. It was simply just to say that the Kojic Village is served by the Benton Township, or not by the city of Benton Harbor.
But we are talking about costs and possible cost increase. So if we could, regain some of those customers, I guess, so that cost is in this report.
What we have in this report and in this recommended project plan is to address the pipes, the water main, and the sanitary sewers within the highlighted regions centered around the Pipestone corridor, as well as some of the trunk sewers on Benton Street and Highland, and water main as well.
So I'm understanding that basically for about $460,000 a year for the next 30 years would take care of this total project that you have in this report today.
So there's that would be the debt service on the funds that would be financed through the DWRF and the SRF loans. There is a component that would be city share that would have to be financed by the city of Benton Harbor up front. But we're trying to when we showed there's a pie chart on the second slide, I believe, that showed the share, and there was a blue portion of that pie chart, which was the drinking water revolving fund, those eligible portions of the project. Trish is going to get us there in a second.
the 66 and the 34.
Yes, sir. So the upper left there, that 30.8 is the drinking water portion. The upper right, the 35% is the wastewater, the state, the SRF portion. And then the gray portion at the bottom is a local share. You know, one of the reasons that we, in identifying all the need that City of Benton Harbor has, and there's plenty of that to go around, we're trying to find projects that maximize and leverage those funds to, you know, make us something that the city is, you know, stretching their money and maximizing the use of these financing opportunities.
The chair recognizes Commissioner at Large Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just my sincere prayer that we don't maximize ourselves up out of here in leveraging. But what I see is the perfect opportunity to do just what my colleague just mentioned. Because the emergency management law was a bad one. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to regain what's rightfully ours in the form of Kojic, water supply, the airport, and El Rico. And if Avonmarsh has something else on the books, that too. That would be wonderful, because if we got to hold the debt, we want what's rightfully ours. We want it back. Some of our largest customers, well, one of them is, hopefully will be in the future, but yeah, Kojic in our airport, I bet it costs a lot of money to spray one of them airplanes down.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. And, you know, I agree it would be great to have the township back, St. Joe Township back, which at one time were water customers. And I'm sure the Native Americans will want Manhattan back, but that's not the likelihood of that at this time. Is not so probable. But I will say that, you know, to hear that the infrastructure will be addressed, and to hear this plan, to see the cost, to rebuild Benton Harbor, it's going to cost residents. Of course, grants and other funding sources are welcome, but that's a reality that I must tell you. If we think that somebody else is going to give us the money or somehow front the cost to rebuild our city, it's not going to happen. It's on us, do for self. And if we pay the cost, that's what makes us the boss. But if we're looking for somebody else to come in, give us the money, somehow, some way, we'll still be waiting. So, you know, I can support infrastructure. I get calls on the hour, every hour. I get tagged on Facebook at least 20 times a day on the potholes, water, infrastructure. Bus fell in on Nolan, which is one of the streets that to be addressed. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. I don't want to pay for nothing that we don't or should not have to. However, I know that it's going to cost, and I'm prepared to do my share. Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Honorable. One last statement to, or one last question to the chair. My question becomes this: how much did we pay for this study? And if the study proceeded at a certain amount, was it an emergency that we incurred to pay for this study? And then we go out and get 3 different people to do this study. I concur with our Constitution, which is our charter, and our charter says a certain amount of money is spent, we gotta go get 3 different bids, and for some reason, I wanna know how much this costs for us to get it done, which, because it's public money, public should know. And I need to know if we did go get 3 different bids from 3 different engineers to get this work done, or does automatically the work continues to go to one entity. Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I appreciate that, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. From my understanding, Abin Marsh is the city engineer. So if that is the case, the city manager can weigh in, then, you know, we would be doubling up on services if, you know, we went and got somebody else, but we were paying Abin Marsh as the engineer. But Mr. Manager?
Yeah, Commissioner Seats, one of the things that was done, the Stormwater Asset Management Plan, the SAW grant, all of that was brought before this commission and passed. The money that has been utilized to pay for these studies comes from grant dollars, except for one, I believe, and that was the water reliability study, which the city paid out of pocket. So when you, as was said, if you bid it out and you have an in-house engineer with the capacity to do the job, and you bid it out, so now you're paying an engineer to do another engineer's work. That's double the cost. So as was stated, the engineer of record for the city of Ben Harbor is Abin Marsh. And they did perform the work, and the lion's share of the work that was performed via grant dollars.
Question was how much, Honorable Mayor, through the chair?
I don't have those dollars, I don't have a resolution in front of me for the Stormwater Asset Management Plan, for the SAW grant. That money, again, to have that information, I could get it. But again, if that would have been something that I would have known was going to be asked, I could have prepared to have it.
Madam Clerk, could you please email to every council member when that resolution was passed? And if you could also, in the electronic mail, show the vote tally, who voted yea and who voted nay.
Also, for a point of clarity, Honorable Mayor, if she could also email through the chair what our charter speaks of to the city engineer. Is it a person or is it a business? Because we have too many contracts that we're hiring businesses instead of individuals. Thank you.
This concludes, in fact, pardon me, the chair recognizes Commissioner Ice.
No, thank you, Honorable Mayor. I just want to know, how was the rates? Could you give a money rate, a money increase? How much rate there will be over if the project is approved? I know the residents have to incur the increase in their water bill. So
Yes.
can you put that in numbers, dollar numbers?
Is there a figure?
Not that I have with me, I could work in that and get that back to the city manager.
There was a percentage.
There were some percentages.
What?
Thank you.
One minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair, I mean, I know the citizens are gonna have to pay for this, but this is what the capital improvement that the emergency manager put on the people was for.
So the water mains, new water mains. Excuse me, new water meters, pardon me, not for this.
So when will they be paid for? Or is it constant ongoing because we're still, the residents are still paying? $4.60, sometimes 65 cents.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner Adams, the capital improvement dollars are dollars that are utilized, as was spoken in this presentation, about matching money or local money that has to go towards that. We started, as was said, was the money that was started, the capital improvement assessment, initially was to pay for the water meters. Through the SAW grant, we got the water meters replaced. So now that dollar amount is still there, so now we have an issue where we have to do work that we have to have matching funds for. So those dollars will go toward helping offset the cost that we have to pay out of pocket. So that money is now being collected to be utilized for this specific reason.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Singleton.
Talk about the increases now, don't that have to come through the commission before there's any increases? This, by approving any of these documents, don't automatically take in that we approve increases, right? So when it comes time, and once we figure out how much increase might need to happen or whatever, that will come to the commission separately. Is that I'm thinking right on that?
The decision or the action to move forward with this project plan does not include an inherent rate adjustment. That would come separately.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of the questions. Pardon me, sir. The chair recognizes our third ward commissioner, Commissioner Henry.
Can you just kind of help me out? It seemed like when we had the SAW grant, there was a lot of money coming in for infrastructure and the sewer. And there was also money that was supposed to be connected to the SAW grant for implication of fixing a lot of the problems. And I'm wondering what happened to that. Is that still available to us?
The money that came in for the SAW grant was directed towards the study itself, which was to map and update and assess the condition. As Tricia, would you mind, is it the next slide or the previous slide? So, yeah, the SAW grant funded the investigation and identifying the condition of and criticality of the stormwater and wastewater systems in the city of Benton Harbor, and identifying the needs that were out there. The reason why I had Tricia back up to this slide is that it shows on the right-hand slide with our little graphic the idea that, and I apologize that they're too small to read, but the one on the upper left is the SAW grant, followed by the Water Asset Management Plan and the Water Reliability Study. Those identified the needs that were out there, and the purpose of what we're in front of you tonight to do is to go after a mechanism of funding those improvements. So we identified the needs, and now, you know, what's the best way that we can find to leverage, you know, to leverage monies and to stretch dollars to get the work done. And I hope that answered your question.
Was there another component to the SAW grant? Phase 2 was to help us. We made the study. We found all the findings and everything that was wrong or right. There was another part that it allowed us to help finance fixing the problem. That is what I just kind of remember. I'd like to know if the SAW grant did have a phase 2.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner Henry, when the SAW grant was put out, there was the first round of SAW grant that went out, and we were in the first round. As a component of the SAW grant, it was, you had to do the study work of it. And then if you had shovel-ready projects, because you already had that information, there was dollars available for implementation. We didn't have any shovel-ready projects at that point because we had no documentation. So we put together the study. In addition, it helped us pay for the water meter change-up that we did in 2014 and 15, I believe it was. And those meters, because they measure sewer, were allowed to be done on that, as that part of that first round. There have been subsequent rounds, but the city did not get a second round because other communities did. So you heard it correctly, but at the time that it was ready to go, we did not have projects that were ready to go at that time. So we didn't have a study on stormwater, we didn't have a sanitary study that was up to date. It allowed us to update them, as well as prepare ones that we did not have, plus about $1.2 million, if I remember, went to change out water meters in the city.
It's on site.
Okay, we've had Avamarch for our engineers for a long time. I've seen study after study that came through this body and we approved for years, just one study after the other. Study the water and how it's going into the sewage, study the sewage, study the sidewalks. We've had study after study. Now you tell me that we didn't have anything shovel ready? We didn't have any information about Benton Harbor. There's one study after another that we get, and we had nothing.
Okay.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner Henry, you're absolutely correct that there have been study after study after study that has come out. The problem is, once you get the study and you don't do anything, then you go back and there's a potential for something to be done. You've got to update the study because the study is 4 to 5 years old. So now, as we talk about it, you're talking about infrastructure that is 100+ years old that becomes more critically bad as time goes on if you don't do anything. That's been our biggest issue. We've done studies, you're absolutely right. There's tons of them, but none of them have been implemented at all. We are now trying to stop that study, put it on the shelf. Study, we'll get to it later. We're trying to put a stake in the ground now to say, we've got to fix it and we got to do it now.
And the fact of the matter is, it's going to cost money. So we can study, but at the end of the day, it's going to cost money to implement what has been studied. And that's why we're here right now. So we can do like our predecessors or whatever and say, you know what, we need to study some more. I need more information, as opposed to moving forward where we can find where we can get money, Benton Harbor, put some money in ourselves, and let's start doing some work. But the paralysis from analysis must stop right here with us and move forward with what we have learned. But to continue to question, nothing gets done.
How you spend your money?
They're telling us how the money will be spent.
It requires questions.
And more study. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you.
This is the last.
The gentleman mentioned something about mapping, and listening to City Manager Watson and the question that gentlelady of Third Ward just asked. You know, as a businesswoman myself, I'm going to just go after what I need to keep my business going.
Let's keep the city's business.
Yeah, let's do that. But let's ask all the right questions, looking back, reflecting, and moving forward. Because if we don't remember where we came from, we could find ourselves in the same boat, taxing people that don't have a job to pay.
Thank you.
Other than one or two. No. He mentioned something about mapping, and I heard City Manager Watson mention it again. Are these projects that the Saul Grant and others did, I did add a discussion about why are we not keeping up with these projects. And I mentioned that earlier on this evening, and nobody actually said, well, it's there. Because we've had a whole bunch of maps and stuff of years and years of what Avonmarsh has done for the city of Benton Harbor, yet nobody has transformed it, put it on new technology to where, let me see what my money working in for me today. Isn't that what mapping is? Let me see what street they working on. What street was fixed yesterday? I mean, that's what these residents need to know about their money instead of us just sitting down here bobbing our heads like we don't have a bone in our neck.
Do you have an answer for that?
Yes, sir, we do.
I can take that. I'm a mapping professional. So I maintain a database. It's based in a map on behalf of the City of Benton Harbor. The City of Benton Harbor owns that information. It's called GIS, Geographic Information Systems. I update it regularly. Anytime work is done in the city, I'm saying, you know, water main was replaced on Washington Street in this year. It's made of this material, of this diameter. The city has that information. How it gets to you or the public that's for the city to decide, but that information is there and we maintain it as best as possible. So we talked about lead service lines earlier. I'm working with city staff to record where the pipes are being replaced, with what and when.
And I thank you, but I mentioned mapping that costs quite a bit of money. City Manager Watson told me this years ago. And that was before this came, or there may have been some discussion on this. But I know for as long as Avonmarsh has been this city's engineer, we should have our own documentation or access to it. We shouldn't have to walk across the street. We should be able to just push a button and gain access to what we need for the money that the city of Benton Harbor has spent with Avonmarsh as this city's engineer. That's simple.
Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing. The city attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. Since it is a public hearing, I think you need to ask the general public as to if they have any comments.
There you go.
This portion of the public hearing from the panel, we'd like to open up for the public. Thank you.
I'll be one of the first to speak on this water issue. We didn't just now have this water issue that we need to have addressed and came up with some conclusion other than just spending money and having someone to study and nothing is done. I brought 2 bottles of water to the mayor over 3 years ago. We should have had some action, some traction even there, so we could have been much further advanced in whatever this is to be fixed. Yes, we've got a big problem here, and we don't have a lot of jobs. Jobs is not even available here. But then we have a serious problem here. Even our high school here, our athletes had toxic water over there at the school, where they had to start bringing in bottled water. Am I not right? Didn't they have to bring in bottled water to those athletes because the water was bad? All right then. 3 years ago, I brought that to the mayor's attention. I got water that came out of my faucets. And I haven't heard him mention anything, Ms. Kennard, I did this, that, or the other with that water. That's what we get from people that we vote and put in these places. Sure, we're supposed to do something for ourselves, but what do we put you here to be a voice for us? To be concerned about what is going on. So it's study after study after study. You're paying for the studies. So if you get these study after study, you're spending out money for that. What are you doing once you get to study? This is what we want to know. If we don't get answers, what's the purpose of having you there?
thank you, for the public participation. We will see when we will take a vote, what your elected official. This brings us to the consent calendar items. Are there any items that should be separate? If so, clerk will note them. Chair recognizes Commissioner Adams.
Resolution approving the amendment to council rule. And resolution adopting final project plan, wastewater system improvement and design, designating an authorized project representative, as well as resolution adopting final project plan for water system improvement and designating authorized project representative.
Did you note that, clerk?
Noted, Your Honor.
Commissioner Henry?
I'd like to pull out, adopting a resolution, approving the appointment of the Housing Commission.
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Manager? Yes, sir.
On the consent calendar, the remaining items on the consent calendar are filling and replacement of Chapter 4, air pollution prevention and control in the city ordinances. Recommendation is that the Mayor Muhammad and the Ben Harbor City Commission approve the replacement of the current language in Chapter 4 of the City of Ben Harbor's Code of Ordinances. Additionally, the modification will become effective for publication and proper notice given to the general public. Second is support for applying for the HUD Youth Homeless Demonstration Program. Recommendation that Mayor Muhammad and the Ben Harbor City Commission approve supporting the application for the HUD Youth Homeless Demonstration Program.
Some motion for the approval of the consent calendar items. Motion made by Commissioner Adams, supported by Commissioner Isom. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Singleton,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats, Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Isom,
Yes.
Mayor Muhammad.
Yes.
Motion carries, Your Honor.
First separated item is appointment to the Housing Commission, Ms. Dorothy Parker. Recommendation is that the Ben Harbor City Commission to appoint Dorothy Parker to the Housing Commission for a 5-year term expiring on November 11, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Adams,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Harrelson. Discussion. Commissioner Henry?
Just wanted to make sure that, Housing Commission, bylaws and criteria were met with having a citizen from the community of Housing Commission on the board. And I just wanted to make sure that, I tried to make some calls to the Housing Commission and, the board members, and I didn't get any response, so I have to ask now.
So what's your question?
My question is there, is the requirement of a resident from the Housing Commission on the board right now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Isom,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
Yes.
Mayor Muhammad.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimous.
Next, we have amendment to the City of Benton Harbor Council rules. Recommendation is that Mayor Muhammad and the Benton Harbor City Commission approve the recommended amendments to the council, City of Benton Harbor Council rules as presented by the city attorney, and recommended by the legislative committee.
Is there a motion for the approval of the council rules? Motion made by Commissioner Adams, supported by Commissioner Henderson. Discussion. Chair recognizes Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. These council rules, just like a whole lot of other things that we came up with somebody came up with 10 reasons why emergency manager was bad for Benton Harbor. Some of the things he implemented was bad for Benton Harbor. And this was one of them. Because it has brought nothing but confusion when the first topic of wanting to change something came up. And the author I know is not one of confusion. And I would make a motion to just eliminate the whole thing and let us go back to our city charter, and we, as a body, are more than capable of putting together our own council rules that are satisfying to us all without, or with less conflict.
Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
I do concur with my constituent. I make a motion that we pull this from the agenda and make up our own council rules for the future. Make a motion.
The motion was to eliminate.
We approve.
Period.
I make a motion to eliminate this from the agenda, period. Thank you. Support.
Make a motion to eliminate the council rules, period.
Commissioner.
Point of order, there's a motion on the floor.
And I made it first.
No, there's a first motion on the floor that you voted first, and I seconded. So there's a motion on the floor. Point of order. That motion has to be rescinded before we can do anything.
To eliminate the council rules.
No,
Did you get that?
there's a motion on the floor. Point of order.
I'm gonna read the initial.
What motion?
The initial question was from the agenda, which was a separated item. Adopt a resolution approving the amendment to the City of Benton Harbor Council rules, which is the document here that was prepared by the city attorney, went through the legislative committee. This is what this item is referring to. It was motioned by Commissioner Adams, and the second was by Commissioner Henderson. And that is the motion that's being entertained.
It was opened up for discussion.
On the floor. For
As
discussion.
I was discussing, I brought in a motion to eliminate, period.
But you already got a motion on the floor.
That was to open up for discussion. See exactly what I'm saying? The author I know is not one of confusion.
I make a motion that we table it.
A motion is already on the floor. Now, in order to, the motion would have to be withdrawn in order to move forward with something else. The maker of the motion would have to withdraw. That's the only thing that can happen at this
If
time.
I'm the maker of the motion, I can be clear about what my motion is to state. Am I right, City Clerk Thompson?
You would have to withdraw Commissioner Adams.
Okay, withdraw the motion. set
Is
forth.
there support to withdraw the
Support.
motion was made to withdraw adopting a resolution approving the amendment to the City of Benton Harbor Council rules, and it was seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. So, The motion has been withdrawn, so
there's no
it's no action being taken on this item. Mr.
So it's
Manager,
open for discussion or what?
no, the motion was withdrawn. City, Mr. Manager, next item.
This is what you call snakies.
The next item is a resolution adopting the final project plan for the wastewater system improvements and designating an authorized project representative. Recommendation is that the city of Benton Harbor formally adopts a project plan, agrees to implement the selected alternative reconstruction. Be further resolved that the city manager is designated as authorized representative for all activities associated with the project referenced above, including the submittal of said project plan as a first step in applying to the state of Michigan for a state revolving fund loan to assist in implementation of the selected alternative.
Is there a motion to adopt a resolution adopting the final project plan for wastewater system improvements and designating an authorized project representative?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Henderson,
Support.
and it is supported by Commissioner Singleton. Discussion.
Are we voting on this one?
A motion has been made and seconded, and it is open for discussion.
No vote at all on the last one? No
Chair
discussion?
recognizes the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Just a point of clarity, I want to know who is going to be the person who represents the city on the project, and this is this resolution contingent on this presentation that we just got? That's the two questions. One, who's going to be our liaison or our point person from the city? Number two, was this with the presentation that we just got? Thank you.
Chair recognizes the City Manager.
Mayor Pro Tem, in the body of the document, it says, whereas the city of Benton Harbor authorized Evan Marsh consultant to prepare a project plan which recommends the construction of wastewater collection system improvements on Pipestone Street, Maple Street, Vineyard Avenue, Michigan Street, Highland Avenue, Wall Street, Nolan, Benton Street, Territorial Street, and Stevens Street. And said project plan was presented in a public hearing held on April 15, 2019. And all public comments have been considered and addressed. And now therefore be resolved that the city of Benton Harbor formally adopts a project plan and agrees to implement the selected alternative of reconstruction. Be it further resolved that the city manager position currently held by Darwin Watson is designated as the authorized representative for all activities associated with the project referenced above, including the submittal of said project plan as the first step in applying to the state of Michigan for a state revolving fund loan to assist in implementation of the selected alternative.
Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
Honorable Mayor, with all due respect, the whereas that concerns me is that said project plan was presented at a public hearing on April 15th, 2019, and what does it say? It says, said project, all public comments have been considered and addressed. And I don't know if somebody know the date,
It's November.
but the date is April 15th. So how can we vote and say that everything that we considered and talked about was already handled and dealt with if it's the same day?
Where the snakes move.
I just don't, I
Point
can't.
of order.
Well,
It was one public comment as it relates to the public,
Honorable Mayor,
which was Mrs. Denard.
I understand that, but it says where the said plan presented at a public hearing held on April 15, 2019, and all public comments have been considered and addressed.
So we're just gonna.
I just think that it's just right to be right and
More studying?
no.
Election.
Well, can I finish if I have the floor?
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. I do think that all the public hearings that I've done, even when I had to deal with Michigan or any other organization dealing with the state, there was a time frame that we had to address those concerns and comments of the community and of our constituents.
That's for HUD.
For real?
HUD is
I thought it was city charter.
Federal.
Charter.
HUD
It's
is
not charter.
HUD is a department of federal government, but I believe that government is government.
It's not the same, Commissioner.
What
So,
committee this come through?
so we can pass a resolution tonight saying that we've considered and addressed all the questions that have been answered. And we can do that without doing harm to the community. I do say,
Mr.
Honorable Mayor, I don't think that's.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Is there a time, I know HUD has a 30-day, is that the case here?
No, it is not.
With the public hearing process, I would ask our attorney, with the public hearing process, there is time stamps that has to be looked at. You
For
can-
HUD?
For anything that has with a public,
No, it's not, Mayor Pro Tem.
the public hearing has certain statutes that have to be met. That's why we could not continue unless we had the public participation.
Right, certain
Thank you,
things
Honorable Mayor.
require public hearing.
I do apologize.
But the
Thank you.
federal government with HUD requires a 30-day period. So there's many things that HUD requires on a federal level that on a state level, that's why you got state rights, which are separate from federal. So it's not the same, but the city attorney would weigh in.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't believe that there is any time requirement, but I will note though, as I did earlier today, that the notice of public hearing that I understand was published suggests that there is a written comments received before the hearing record is closed on April 22nd, 2019.
Wow.
So in the public notice itself, it suggests that the public comment period has not yet closed. It does not close until the 22nd of April.
And what committee this come through?
So, Mr. Manager, is this something that should be pushed for vote toward or after the 22nd?
No, sir. This is the same process that the city of Benton did in 2007 when we got money. This is the same process that the state of Michigan authorized the city of Benton Harbor to do in 2007 when we got monies to redo the water plant. Those were done through DWRF and SRF funding. The comment period, you can pass the resolution and then you have to submit it after that period is done. So there is a 7-day period, but that does not preclude you from doing the action right now. This does not have, the submittal of the document is not until May 1st. But you have to do this in advance of May 1st so that you can submit it on behalf of the city of Benton Harbor.
And is this the last?
This is the last meeting before May 1st. And just to talk about this, this has been presented 3 times. Actually 4. It's been done 3 times. It was done at the Personnel Finance Committee, if I remember. It was done at the Tax Oversight Committee. It was done at this commission meeting, and this is the 4th time it's been done. That the projects that need to be done have been presented to the commission and the general public.
Your Honor, I would think that the city manager is correct. You could vote on this tonight, and then if there was a submission time and there's additional public comment, you you would submit the additional comments along with the application. So,
Make it fit.
I am not aware of the process as a city manager. Maybe I wasn't here and involved in 2008 or 2007. But I'm just pointing out the public hearing presentation period has not yet concluded. But I don't think that restricts you, the commission, from voting on it this evening.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Commissioner Henry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you're right. This was presented in part. Every time it was presented to a committee meeting, but never to the degree that we getting it today. I got this today. I'm not ready to give my approval to it until I can sit down and vet and figure out some more questions to ask. Because after Albert March left, I thought of some more questions I could have asked them. But because I got this document, and it was because of technical errors, because it was tried to be sent out to us and it got sent back. But I got it today and I'm not ready to vote on it until I vet completely. And when I hear a public hearing, I think citizens have an opportunity to have some input. But if it means nothing for a citizen to have an input, all you're going to do is to put it in the report, and it means nothing to us. That's not what my concept of public hearing is for us to listen to the citizen and take into account what they're saying. If it's after the vote, I can't take into account. We can only say that we voted on it and add the citizen's comment. So I'm not in agreement with it at this point because of those reasons. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Kind of, with that, the 22nd being put in there, it's kind of deceiving, where the resolution says that we took into account the citizens' input or comments. But if we vote on it, this should have came probably at the last meeting, where we would have had another meeting, before that deadline to take into account. But those are the things that we just got to do better on, because this don't sound right. It just give it an appearance that especially when you stated your notice, that, and so maybe we just have to have a special meeting. I'm willing to give back my stipend, because I don't think we need to pay for no more, but we need to come back and consider, at that time, just to do right by what we said we were going to do in the notice.
The process.
Right, but if the city attorney said that for us to vote tonight, but if we need to come back, if that's the will of the council, to come back and do a special meeting to honor May 22nd or April 22nd, but we do know that it's a deadline.
Right.
Okay. So my main thing, we can do it on the 22nd of April, 23rd, preferably Monday, but we need to make the deadline.
Let's do it.
So we can get something done, or we got more study. Chair recognizes Commissioner Harrelson.
I suggest that we just come back on another day and do it.
So is there a withdrawal of this motion? Yeah.
Commissioner Henderson. You were the maker of the motion.
Yeah, questions.
It's a motion on the floor.
I'm saying there was questions down there.
Okay.
Somebody on the
Supported.
Chair recognizes Mayor Pro Tem seats.
Yeah,
Motion on the floor.
yeah, well, it's discussion still. Anywhere you look in the Michigan Municipal League or in Public Act 43, it says that you're to have public hearings prior to any form of agreement, or, matter of fact, the correct wording is, and it says before you have, it says prior to any final adoption or to any vote. So you'd have had a public hearing.
We had a public hearing.
All the other public hearings have come, well, and I'm gonna say this again. All the public hearings that I've ever dealt with have come on committee nights. Then we vote on the next commission meeting. If this was that important, then we should have had it on a committee night. Then when it came tonight, we could have voted. And then the time frame that even our beloved attorney had just suggested that we put in writing on the 22nd. You know, I mean, our attorney, he said 22nd, so why would we pass something before do we know that somebody put something in writing? Has somebody answered that question? Was anything submitted from anybody in writing? I mean,
From the record tonight, it was one person from the public who spoke.
When was it posted?
And nothing in writing, Mayor.
When was it posted?
So it was not in writing, it was not even relative to this report.
To inform the residents.
I withdraw myself from the floor so everybody else can have that time. Thank you, Honorable Mayor.
Is there a withdrawal of this motion, or are we going, I mean, we voting on it, or what are we
We
doing?
still have a discussion, are we?
So the motion is not withdrawn.
I would be careful that if we do some kind of voting and we do vote this down, could we not be in violation of the Clean Water Drinking Act?
I mean, that's why we need to just do the right thing.
That is a question for
Motion to table it to the special meeting.
I did not withdraw my motion.
The motion was not withdrawn. Still a motion on it.
Again, Honorable Mayor, would ask that we be careful that if we vote on this motion, that we not be in violation of the Clean Water Drinking Act, which is prosecutable.
City Attorney, could you state in terms of, for us to vote on this item, you said that it would not be illegal, or you didn't say illegal, but could you restate that, please, for the record?
Your Honor, I believe that the city commissions could still vote as currently is on the floor. The public hearing, public comment is open until April 22nd. And after the 22nd, if there are no additional comments, or even if there are additional comments, those additional comments, which we anticipate to be written, would be sent along with the application, and you would have met the time requirement.
To the Mayor Pro Tem's question, if this was voted down, would this be, place us in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act?
Your Honor, I do not know what the consequences of you failing to pass this, other than I believe there is an application period, as mentioned by the city manager. And if you do not hit that application date, I would assume that those grant monies are not available for work.
Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
Now, I would ask Mr. O'Malley, who's here in this audience.
You can ask the chair. Mr. O'Malley is not a part of this discussion.
Well, he knows the law, Honorable Mayor. And I will withdraw myself from this vote, because I'm not going to jail for none of y'all.
I wanna know where this back meeting happened that this resolution came from.
So, Mr. Manager.
There's a couple things. The accusation of a backdoor meeting this is from boilerplate from the state of Michigan. So there was a backdoor meeting, the state of Michigan held it.
The question was when. what
Point of
the meeting
order,
is coming
point of
up.
order.
Again, Commissioner, this has been presented over and over and over and over again. The plan in its entirety, we have picked out parts of it that are critical to this community to address to get this money, because if not, you're gonna have sewage backing up on Pipestone, as you saw that plume that was created. That's one. The other part that you're gonna have is over here on Benton Street, where that sewer goes all the way over to the interceptor, and it takes the northeast part of this community. Now, if you want to ask the question about being in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act, you're not going to be in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. What you're going to have is you're going to have a public health problem, where you're going to have sewage backing up in a number of people's homes.
That's already happening.
That is going to be of a magnitude that you cannot deal with. So if you don't want to do anything, that's fine.
We can't fix one.
But again, you're going to have problems that, again, if we continue to kick the can down the road, there's not going to be a can.
Honorable Mayor, I just have a problem with just getting this
The
documentation.
chair is recognizing this Commissioner Singleton, who has
Yesterday.
patiently
On
had
Sunday.
his hand up. Commissioner Singleton.
Now, my question is, okay, it ain't the point of we not want to do nothing, and I mean, all this about, yeah, we know if we don't do nothing, we're gonna have all this, what the manager say, backups and smoke and doo-doo coming out,
Point of order.
Excuse me.
Please, sir, for the sake of.
But it ain't gonna happen, and, if one more day is not gonna,
Well, why?
what we wanna do, we wanna get it in before before May 1st, meet the deadline, but, I mean, unless you guys so busy that you don't mind coming, that you can't come back Monday or something, what's the,
Well, why put off to tomorrow what we can do today, because it's no violation? Whatever in the public comment period, that will be included with the resolution.
I just feel that the
The
appearance.
meeting is on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube.
Point of order.
We've had public participation.
Point of order, Chair.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
Point of order, Chair. I do believe the Commissioner Singleton has the floor. And you cannot bully and take it from him.
Wow.
I reject bullying, but I will relinquish the floor to the gentleman at large, Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Commissioner. But, the appearance, man, I mean, just to keep everything clean, 'cause we always talk about following these guidelines and follow this and stuff, just to keep it clean, because it's just the appearance there when you said the 22nd, even though, yeah, we might could do that, but you said the 22nd. What harm do it is to say, okay, we want to keep it clean, we come back the next day and just do it. We still get it in.
Where it says, whereas said project plan was presented at public hearing held on April 15, 2019, and all public comments will be considered and addressed.
Bring in the 22nd now. What did it say about the 22nd?
No, because I'm thinking about where we can amend, whereas said project plan was presented at a public hearing held on April 15, 2019, and all public comments will be considered and addressed at the close of the public comments on May 22nd.
At the end and the close. Yep.
I think that would satisfy that May 22nd public, April 22nd, Commissioner Jones.
I think we should take the advice of Commissioner Singleton at a special meeting, because we're supposed to be dealing with transparency, and it's being very transparent that this is being premeditated. This was also addressed at the last commission meeting. No, not the last commission meeting. The commission meeting when we dealt with the building sitting on the corner of Pipestone in Maine, where Commissioner Juanita Henry made comment to how this was addressed, dated and whatnot, because we could have voted it down and it was already situated to say that we approved it. So, since it's already made out for April the 22nd, to guarantee that everybody's comment and input is weighed in with the submission, then take a chance to go against what we're supposed to be so much about prior to the risk not having everybody weigh in, because that don't count. How we know somebody's going to speak up tonight? How we know who's going to really deal with that tonight? How we know we got enough people for a quorum to deal with that? So let's keep it clean. Let's have that special meeting so everything be weighed in and considered. Our attorney already addressed this. So no matter how we try to put a spin to it, we need to do what we said we're going to do.
So aggressive.
Well, what would need to be done is
What need to be done is what we had to adhere to in the first place.
the person
April
who
22nd.
put forth the motion.
Point of order.
Brought a motion.
Point of order, Mayor.
And then we can
City.
move it to business,
Point
business.
of order, Mayor.
Commissioner
The
Henderson.
floor belongs to the honorable chair of.
Commissioner Henderson has the floor.
He wasn't finished. You're bullying again.
No, he don't bully me. But let's understand, like you said, we're gonna keep government handled like it's supposed to. So we need to address those deadlines that we have set forth. No matter how we try to put a spin on this, we need to adhere to what we're gonna do.
I had a question. So the same thing would happen on Monday. So if we wait till Monday, till the 22nd, we would have to have a special meeting on the 28th to actually approve this. So what you're saying is wait until the 22nd, until it closes, then on the 28th have a special meeting. So we don't necessarily need to have a special meeting on the 22nd because it's the same thing. So we'll have a resolution that says 4/22/19, the night of a special meeting, that we're including resident comments. So the smart thing will be to do it on the 28th, which is the last Monday of the month, because the 22nd, which is Monday, would be the exact same process, because you'll have a resolution dated the 22nd. So, no, what I'm saying, no, well, whenever the last Monday is of the month, it would not be smart to have a commission meeting next Monday, because we'd have the same thing. So it will be the 22nd as well. That's my,
I mean, whatever
point
day we
that-
want to do it. Go ahead.
And my last thing to say about this is, I don't know exactly how many comments we've gotten overall. As the manager stated, we've addressed this thing three different times. And I don't know if people came out or knew about it or what, as it relates to the water. And so people have gotten those filters. People know that there has been issues and stuff that we need to address. So people are not new as to the ABC 57 has made sure that everybody knows that there's some issues with the water in the city of Benton Harbor. I've seen it plastered over their news probably for the last week and a month prior to that. So I think people understand and they know what's happening in the city. If they wanted to have comment, because thanks to ABC 57, they knew that there was a meeting at 7 o'clock tonight. He was outside today, plastered in front of our building, talking about the water and what was going to happen. So if people wanted to have a comment other than the person that spoke on tonight, they would have been here. And so I hear what the commission is saying. And I do understand we do need to take those into consideration. But what I heard Ms. Canara say, stop kicking the can down the road and do something. If I'm correct, that's what she said. So I don't know what the other comments were. She pretty much said, y'all need to fix it. Whatever's happening here, y'all need to fix it. So I don't know, and my question is, how are we including the residents' comments in the decision overall to the mayor?
what has to be done, first thing is, this has been out, a public hearing announcement went out a month ago. This has been out 1 month. This has been out for some time. You have been provided the overall plan, again, now 4 times. This is just, the only difference in what you got now and what you've been provided is this specifically identified one sector of what needs to be done. What you have to do when you submit these applications is, if there are comments in writing, you have to submit them to the DEQ to let people know that you have seen them and you're addressing them by giving them to the DWRF and the SRF fund. When that happens, they then consider them in what you do. And it's no guarantee that we're going to get this. But that's part of the process. So any comment received post tonight will be put together with the application and submitted to the DWRF and SRF fund and ask that we get funding for these particular projects.
Make a motion to table.
I'll call for the question.
I have one more comment.
I'll call for the question.
Support on the tables.
I have one more question, Honorable Chair.
A motion on the floor.
There's nobody been recognized for the floor yet, Madam Mayor.
I have one more question, Honorable Mayor.
I made a motion to table.
Chair has not recognized anybody for the floor. Commissioner Henry.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Is this the same document that rumor has that it was signed by staff or by elected official, elected official, without us not having the knowledge of it? Is this the same document that DEQ got our approval on already, pre-approved? And I need a truthful answer if this is the same document that DEQ got a signed agreement from the city of Ben Harbor through the mayor's office. Talking about transparency, let's have it.
Mr. Manager, please.
The administrative consent order has absolutely nothing to do with this.
That's all I need to hear.
It's two completely different. This is a methodology that the state has made available for communities to borrow money at a low interest rate to address issues that they have in their community. The administrative consent order is an agreement with the state that you will do some things, as was identified in here about some of the stuff we've done already, that do not violate the Safe Drinking Water Act. So they're two completely different issues, Commissioner Henry. This has nothing to do, one has nothing to do with the other.
Good, you being transparent with the process, and that's a good thing.
Thank you.
I would like to,
Commissioner Henderson.
I would like to table this until after the 22nd.
Support. Motion to table, Commissioner Henry, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
Yes.
Mayor, if I can ask a clarity question, so are we having a meeting on the 22nd? Just table it until after the 22nd, okay. Commissioner.
Whoa, we need to set a meeting now. We need to set a meeting. Because people need to prepare for this special meeting.
Can we take that a motion?
And I recommend that it be after the 22nd, since the notice period does not give a time on the notice.
What's wrong with the 23rd? What's wrong with the 23rd?
The 5th Monday.
29th.
I'll add that verbiage in it after the 22nd, and we'll have a meeting on the 29th. Therefore, we can we can get all our questions answered now that we've got the full plan.
Is that noted, Madam Clerk?
It's noted, Your Honor. Ready for roll call?
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Season.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton.
Yes.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Season.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson.
Yes.
Commissioner Isom.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson.
No.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Mayor Muhammad.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Because the last one was related to the same document.
So the last one will just go to old business.
There's another resolution related to the same thing.
Yeah.
So both of those, the decision has been made to move that to the 29th.
The second item in order.
It's related to they're one and the same.
Make a motion to.
It just be moved to, table to move to old business.
And so it will be dealt with on the 29th. It was brought from the table.
Do we need an actual motion for that?
We need a motion for that.
Yes. Motion.
Okay.
To move.
Yes.
Okay.
A motion to table until the 29th.
Make a motion to table until the 29th.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem, supported by Commissioner Harrelson. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson.
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson.
No.
Commissioner Isom.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
Yeah.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton.
Yes.
Mayor Muhammad.
Yes.
Motion carries.
This brings us to staff comments.
Is there another item?
Oh.
Mr. Manager.
No, that's all.
That's it.
Yeah.
I thought I was, I didn't want no confusion.
She had me up this table.
Thank you. So, I thought I was confused. I'd like to, again, staff comments. I'd like to start with our Deputy Director of Public Safety, Deputy Clark.
I'm just gonna keep it real short. The only big thing that we wanted to put out, for the month of March, there were 0 burglaries and 0 robberies in the city of Benton Harbor.
Are you writing that?
Is that a front page story?
Mr. Henry?
ABC 57. You have a full page, full spread interview. The chair recognizes our Community Economic Development Director, Janice.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Community and Economic Development Department continues to work on HUD timeliness and pursue technical assistance through HUD. If you get a chance to look at City Center Park, the structure is up and the Farmers Market Pavilion project should be completed by the end of April. And we're working on a few other projects as well to meet that end of April deadline.
So the May 1st, was that where we had to have all the monies, May 2nd? How are we with that?
We are working on that and waiting to bill. One of our biggest bills for HUD will be once the farmers market is completed. But we can't bill HUD until the work is completely done, so we'll have like a 2 to 3 day period where we get billed for the completion of the project and we can bill HUD for that, and that will count strongly towards us meeting that timeliness factor.
And what about the monies that were used in conjunction with, I see a lot of,
USDA?
not a lot of side conversations, please, with Southwest Community Action Agency, that improvement, home improvement funds.
We're still working on those, and we're working on for this funding period, I think we have 2 home repairs that we're working on finishing up so that we can get billing for that as well.
if possibly, how much money could possibly go back or not be spent?
Right now, possibly could be to the tune of $100,000. But we're working to make sure that it'll be zero.
Thank you. Chair recognizes City Assessor Stewart.
Thank you. Not long ago, out of my office, we did receive word that the AMAR, which is the Auditor Minimum Assessing Requirements, is indeed coming to audit Berrien County. They've already made a request for our database for 2019, and so that has been submitted to the state. I expect to hear from them at some point within the next week or two as far as an appointment for me to provide all of the materials that they will ask for. This is an important review. If we do well, and we're shooting for a perfect score, but I'll be happy with a high score. But if we do well, this means that we will receive our jurisdiction over our 2018 rollback. And as you know, back in 2015, the failed AMAR review then resulted in a complete reappraisal of the city and having to clean everything up. So we have high hopes of scoring well on that to start a new chapter in the city as far as the assessing department.
Thank you.
Another good one. Ms. Hayes, please.
The chair recognizes our City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no report for you today.
Thank you for your diligent work.
It's a good one, too.
Chair recognizes our City Clerk Thompson.
Filing deadline for local offices is next Tuesday, April 23rd at 4:00 p.m. And I had a question, and I should have asked it during the last motion, but do we have a time set for the special meeting? Is it 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or?
7 o'clock, and can I get a consensus to add this other item that was not voted on? About the council rules?
The time would be 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other information, Madam Clerk?
No other information.
Chair recognizes the City Manager.
Just quick, April 30th is the final date for the city income tax. Unlike today is the final day for your state and federal. You're not required to submit your payments and or your tax return to the city until April 30th. Just to echo what Community Economic Development Director Jennings said, the city was tasked with spending, we have to spend roughly 80% of about $1.4 million, which equates to about $865,000. We are at $600,000 right now. The farmer's market is a $250,000 project. So we will be extremely close. In fact, I believe we'll be over because concurrently the work on the armory started today. So there was tuck pointing that was begun today on the armory, and then that work is going to be completed by that day as well. It's not a requirement that we spend all of the money. We have to spend the lion's share of it to make sure we make the timeliness. So that's what we're trying to do. There was a question about income tax and about the roads. The projects, there's been a presentation made and a recommendation made. It now comes to the City Commission for final approval on what will be done. And that has to come before this commission for approval. And then, like I said, the monies that are with the income tax will be utilized for those projects going forward. So we're hopeful that by the end of this year, before the end of this year, you will see asphalt flying somewhere at a minimum to get those things done, because like I said, the City Commission has the final say on the recommendations that were made a couple months ago. So that's it. Thank you.
I do like to, I want to recognize the 4th Ward Commissioner who just had an anniversary of birthday. So I do want to publicly
All right now.
say I'm glad God bless you to see another year.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrelson.
Like he had said, I was a crybaby yesterday. But anyway, thank you, Honorable Mayor. I just like to say, I like to thank all the citizens that came out to see our government in action on tonight. I have one thing. There is a tree that's up by the roof on 700 block of McGuigan, right? It's the whole route right across the sidewalk, right at this lady's door almost.
Yeah, but actual address, you know the actual address, or it's just in that block?
It's the 700
Of McGuigan?
of McGuigan.
Okay.
And she said it's been there since since early March.
Okay.
Thank you. That's it. And thank everybody for wishing me a happy birthday.
Many more. Commissioner Henry.
I want to thank the citizens that stayed the whole time here. And when we have public hearings, there's information that you really need to be involved with, and it is our duty to make sure that you have it in any way, if it's on the internet or however way we need to make sure that the citizens get information on everything that we're doing. And so I asked my colleagues to put an extra effort to getting this information out. Of course, the public hearing was talked about weeks ago, but we just got the final document today. So I don't know if the citizens knew that that was there in the clerk's office or what, but we have to do better to keep the citizens involved and to let them know what's going on. We cannot do this by ourselves. We need our citizens to help. It is not true that our citizens don't know or dumb down. They're not. They're very aware, and all we gotta do is to get them the information and allow them to give their input and consider it. That's important, that we really consider what the citizens is saying. Write it down and throw it in a report, and then make your decisions way before the input isn't taken in. So I'm just saying that it's a lot of things that's going on in this community, in this government, that's not conducive to help the citizens' life. It's happening. We know it's happening. We see it, but we gotta fix it. That means you can't be bent over. You gotta stand up straight. So, citizens, it's a new day. If you don't see the kind of movement you want, then you move. And you at the polls. The bottom line is, it's a new day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you much. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and then participating in this, what we call a process. Public announcement. I, for one, can speak on quite a few of our citizens that may not receive that information. Everybody do not watch 57, any of the other channels. A lot of people don't get the newspaper. A lot of people we don't even really talk to even communicate what we are doing down here when we question by them. A lot of times we ignore them. And when I say we, I'm counting myself along with the commission here. I'm not trying to separate myself at this point. And a lot of times we don't let them know. A lot of things will be in the paper we don't know. A lot of times it don't be in the paper. We'll say it's in the paper.
So with that, along with the process of Q&A, you are doing for yourself. Doing for yourself can be interpreted in a lot of ways. All right? Asking questions is not going against you. That's the beginning of you doing for yourself. The beginning of ignorance is the beginning of knowledge. So you're going to question that. So I would say ask them all the type of questions you want because, again, like I presented before, overviews. If it was a presentation, they would precipitate a lot of the questions you may have, a lot of the figures. You just don't show up out of the blue and just say, okay, this been asked before, now we got a final. Still no figures. I didn't bring my figures with me. Okay, that's not a true presentation. All right? No different that you would expect from me to say, this is the findings I got from my residents. All right? And I should be able to break everything down for you. All right? Also, with doing for yourself, it sounds like you're wishing to be sovereign. Each individual be sovereign from the Benton Harbor City. Right? That means being sovereign, whereas I don't need the protection of our safety officers. I don't need to be a part of this process. I call the local government. I don't need you guys because I'm self-sufficient. But then too, while we speaking to that, why are we not practicing that with our own government? We got workers that should be able to do this and show no the consistency of the asphalt instead of us outsourcing and doing all these other things. So being self-sufficient, I mean, it goes a long ways. We need to pay attention to that. Also, again, I like to recap from the last meeting about the dollar ride situation when Mr. Purvis came here. And I'm glad Mr. Little came in to address that. Who, any place you work at, did you always like your boss? All right? Who said you got to be well liked? Plenty of times, things was offered to Mr. Little to throw Mr. Purvis under the bus, and he didn't do that. Again, I showed up for these meetings. So when Mr. Purvis addressed the commission and say, you guys need to show up and do this and that, I was there, along with Juanita. I was there sometimes, nobody knew I was there. I also then made a visit there, $2 ride. Checked out some of the buses and whatever else. Also that system he was talking about. But let's go back some years ago where Dollar Ride had an incident on Empire where some youth threw rocks, and due to the camera system, them youths were caught. Nothing was mentioned about that. There's a lot of disgruntled workers dealing with Dollar Ride before Mr. Little, during Mr. Little, and after Mr. Little. So we need to pay attention again, as I said, who we put on these boards and saying that these people are the reason why we sitting here today. Because if that was true, nobody would have to speak for them. They'd be here today leading that same charge that was also put out there for us that they never set up in the first place. So let's pay attention to who we put on these boards and also show up for these meetings as well, because if you recommended them, you should be able to follow and make sure they're doing what they need to be doing in the first place.
Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Just wanted to talk, thank everybody for coming out tonight and hearing all of the things that happened on tonight. Like the manager said, we have talked about and beat it to death, the information about the water. Some people come in unprepared or confused about what's happening during the meeting, and then they get mad at you and throw accusations around, which is not necessarily the best use of our time, because just like I think everybody that was elected, we love the city of Benton Harbor. We could have chosen to buy homes or move to any other community, but we chose to buy homes and to live in the city of Benton Harbor. Just to continue throwing around of accusations of this or that, we love the city of Benton Harbor. I've never had family members that own businesses that came to get contracts. I've never told anybody they could get a contract if they opened up this or that. And so we have all of this stuff being said about, you know, all these things, different things being can't say it, but the same people who are saying them are guilty of some of them. And so, as most people have said, we have an election coming up on really soon. And so we need to make sure that we get out to vote. We have people up here that's confused. They should not be here, as you can see. And you can take that any way that you like. We need to vote people in office who has the best interest of the city in place. Not because they can tell you that we're going to get marijuana in the city. We need the best people in office to represent the city of Benton Harbor. Just because we are the city of Benton Harbor does not mean we don't need the best representation. We need the best representation that we can get in the city of Benton Harbor. That's what that means. So I hope people go to the polls. In fact, get involved. Recruit people to run. We need people that got common sense and sense. That when we're making decisions, we're voting on things, that we're talking about things, we're talking about the issues. Like you just talked about, I've had bosses I didn't like, but I respected the system, and I was able to work through those systems. You're not going to like everybody. You're not going to agree, because that's not the democratic process. You're not supposed to. But you are supposed to be able to hold conversations that are intelligent and that are audible, that can be understood by everyone. That should be a primary criteria for running for the city of Benton Harbor. To make sense when you are talking about issues, to understand those issues fully. You can get all of the research you want, go to all the meetings you want, but when you stand before the people and you don't even know what it's about, what is the purpose? Some people are at every meeting and you ask them what is going on, they act like they haven't sat in a meeting. Those council rules, we sat in a legislative committee meeting for nearly 3 hours trying to hammer out something that somebody said they wanted. And that same very thing that we talked about and tried to hammer out was not even voted on. We wasted 3 hours of time. I have a husband and kids. That was 3 hours away from my family. The staff were here from 8:30 till nearly 9 o'clock, hammering out details for a proposal we didn't even vote on. That was a waste of time, colossal. And I say to the people, vote, make your voices known. Don't just vote for people because you're related to them. We related to a lot of people. Vote for people that need to represent the city and represent it in a way that is honorable and that you can respect. I'm definitely going to make my voice known, and I'm definitely going to do that at the polls and tell other people. Don't just vote for them because you know them. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. You need to add also being transparent too. You know, when you have opportunity to do things, you know, the right way, even if you kind of slipped up, but if you still have a little window in there to get it right before you do it, you know, you got that time. What, you know, what's the hurry? You know, me and the pro tem were talking this weekend about old guys, you know, telling us those stories and trying to get us on the right track. And it would remind me of a story about old guy told me about, you know, not trying to be so much in a hurry. He told me a story about the chicken hawk and the buzzard. And said they was on top of the building. They were both hungry, looking for a meal. Wasn't nothing coming through. The chicken hawk said, "Oh, man, I'm hungry. I see them chickens down there." And the buzzard said, "Well, I'm gonna wait on the good graces of the good Lord." You know. And they said, "Well," they sit there and they waited. Buzzard said, "I'm gonna wait." Chicken hawk said, "I can't wait no more." He took off flying like a bat out of you know what. And so in a hurry to get that chicken, bust his head wide open. Dead. And the buzzard swooped down and said, "I told you I was waiting on the graces of the good Lord." And I remembered that, you know, what's the hurry? And when you got time to do it right. So, you know, I know it's get agonizing sometimes, you know, and you know that's why it's 9 folks here, you know. Let's get it, you know. Let's get it. Let's discuss it. Let's not get mad about, you know. Sometimes I don't like a lot of opinions, you know, but I still respect it, you know. I don't get mad if I don't get my way, you know. I don't interrupt, you know. It's a, you know, it's a way to do things. So, you know, I think, I want to say that we're getting better, you know. And just like, you know, Commissioner Henderson say, you know, there is a election, you know, coming up. We talk about getting citizens involved, and those citizens who want to get involved. I asked the clerk, she said, if there weren't too many people coming down putting in, you know, for those positions, maybe they'll make a mad dash at the last minute, but or maybe they see what goes on here and say, you know, it might be a tough spot, but the thing is to be as transparent as possible and try to do the things the right way. You know, we're gonna make mistakes, yes, you know, but when we got a chance to get it right, I say let's do it. So, thank you for coming up.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Ice.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I'd like to thank the residents and citizens coming out tonight. It's been a good night, learned a lot. You know, I try to look for the good in people, you know, but you know, we're going to disagree and agree. You know, the city has a lot going on. You know, we got streets, trash, you know, but we still just got to keep moving forward, you know. I got this story I just heard about a chicken hawking a buzzard. But you know, it's a learning process, and you know, we're just gonna keep doing this. You know, I thank the residents for coming out and talking about the streets. We do need more residents to get involved, to holler, you know, to say something, you know. Instead of seeing you at Myers or some store or seeing you out and just let it go on you, you know. But thank you for coming out tonight, voicing your opinion. We need that more. And, you know, I just thank God for being on this commission and trying to do the best I can, you know, and learning from these group of guys, people that I've been working with, you know, so thank you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks to residents for taking time out of your busy schedules to come down here and see how things are working for you or not. Because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And I am so grateful that Ben Harbor chose me to come down here and find out why things are not working for me, why the streets are tearing up and stuff. And I've been down here ever since. And history is going to say a whole lot. See, I have not done anything, but I've been able to work with some people that cherished and had the same dream to jumpstart the growth in this community. And I'm just grateful because the vision is coming to fruition. But you can't keep taxing a poor person and lessen another poor. No, you can't keep taxing a poor person because some of us that think that we've gotten there, that are still poor, don't mind taxing the poor. You know, I'm not the greatest educated person in the world. I'm a beautician, not a magician. But I do have a few tricks up my sleeve. I didn't make it to 60 being stupid. I'm so glad that the way we look is not, it is not deemed at how I represent you and what you actually elected me to do. Because if you look at some of our records, some of us has done nothing but held up the process. So please go vote. Please make sure you go vote. And those of us that don't need to be sitting here, don't run. Run and keep running. Run past the poll. Because I'm so tired of the oppositions that sit in some of these seats, a few of them, that have done nothing but held up progress as bad as we need jobs and some other growth in this community. I am fed up, not of my people, and that means all people that has an interest in coming to Benton Harbor, making Benton Harbor their home, coming through the front door of our city hall and wanting to do business with the city of Benton Harbor and how we can grow together. That's growth. That's growth. You can't do anything when you're running around in back room. You a taxpayer. And many of you more are taxpayers. We got some books, ordinances. Get it. If a contract come up, guess what? You're just as eligible to bid on things as anybody else. If you are qualified, if I'm trying to talk you into being an entrepreneur, are you going to leave your own city to go do? I'm telling you, some people sound as stupid as they speak to throw lugs at somebody else because of a look. I'm so tired of educated dummies that just want to look and play a part. Get out of my way.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
I don't think, well, I do have something to say. I was going to say, I don't have nothing to say, but I feel like just praying right now. You know, I had a little devotion for me. I want to appreciate all the city residents coming down here to see your city in action. I also do want to appreciate those of you that have kept this ball rolling in our city. I say oftentimes we need, I think that was one of my constituents said, we need less missionaries and more settlers. People who will come and help foot the bill to keep our city rolling. And on behalf of one of my former constituents, who has a radio show that's called Mindsets, he posed a question. He said, what are they going to do, threaten you with poverty? We already got that. My heart goes out to our school system. And I might not have enough time, and I want to appreciate ABC 57 for their consistent news reporting of the positive things that go in Benton Harbor. It's surprising to me that WNDU and WSBT don't ever show up, but they did show up one night when I turned the meeting out. But they haven't been back since, and I got a radio interview that I got to do and a news interview I got to do in Indiana this week to try to clarify that which happened. The saddest thing is, the reality is that the way it was positioned is that Mayor Pro Tem Seats is against medical marijuana or against marijuana for the recreational use. For a fact, I'm not against what you do with your own personal time. That's your business. But I do think that Benton Harbor has already been sedated for years and years and years. And the question came up amongst 300 people. And they said, how many of you started smoking weed when you were hurting on your body or you had some kind of ailment when you first smoked a joint? And nobody raised a hand. And that kind of deterred the whole argument. Benton Harbor needs education. We need jobs. We need rehabilitation. We have scattered housing. We have snaggletooth housing. You have people who look out the side door and can't see a house for 4 or 5 lots. And now those lots are being taxed and being assumed by anybody else who wants them from not on the inside, but from the outside. What Benton Harbor used to look like is not looking like anymore. And we just got to come up with a plan to sustain those who are here, who have paved the way. We have senior citizens who we have not honored. We have people who have paid taxes, who have marched, who have done all kind of things that we have not even talked about or honored. You know, there's an my grandparents taught me to respect my elders, to respect the seniors. And have we been diligent in doing that? It's not really about me when I get done, even when I leave here. It's about somebody else who can get help and be helped. And the tragic matter is, and I'm closing with this, that I spoke to the treasurer today, to know how many seniors are losing their homes for less than $1,000 in back taxes. And we have the nerve to shut our nose and keep on going like it doesn't matter when somebody has to say, do I pay for medicine or pay my taxes? And then we say like it's no big deal to add more to them. There's a difference in adding more to somebody who can work, and there's a difference in somebody who has a fixed income. We can't afford to pay no more for water. We already pay more than anybody else. We're the second highest tax in the state, and we're the highest unemployed. We need to be about getting jobs to Benton Harbor. This ain't about neither one of these 9 people sitting at these boards. And I guarantee you the 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 people that elected you out of the 10,000 would prefer that we fight for them and not us. So I appreciate even the time, because there's sometimes I look down this road and I was getting a letter ready. But I said, you know, there's some people out there who need our help. And they ain't, Mayor, and I thank you for giving me 2 hot towel minutes. There ain't people beating down the door to run for mayor. There ain't people beating down the door to run for 1st Ward, 2nd Ward, 3rd Ward, 4th Ward, Commissioner at Large. It ain't like it was 10, 12 years ago when you had to get in the line up to try to run. We got to appoint some people to these positions because ain't nobody stepping up to even want to fill the vacancies. So let us not pop our collar and stick our chest out. Mr. Geraldine, want you right? Like ain't nothing going on. You don't have that going on because don't nobody want to even come step up to even take your place. School board, same thing. Nobody's stepping up to do it. They're appointing people. So let's pray for our city, to move our city forward. And let's stand behind each other, that we all can make it and all become something great. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to applaud the Department of Public Safety again for 0 robberies. And 0 what?
Home invasions.
Home invasions. We just got to work on of course, the guns, but that's a whole nother animal. To that point, like for you to keep the Henry family in your prayers. Mayor Cook, please keep him in your prayers. You know, life is very, it's a vapor, it's short. So we're here today and gone tomorrow. So I would just say that in the heat of all of the passion and fight that we have, let's remember at the end of the day, we all have to go the same way. And just keep that in mind when we, go get fisticuffs. And I know the city council and city of Benton Harbor, politics is a contact sport. So don't go to the hole expecting to get no foul. If anything, you better be looking to get an A in one. And be ready to, shake hands after the game or after the meeting. Because the real fight, we may spar in here, but nobody is declared a champion from no sparring match. The real fight is out there. Fighting for the residents and fighting for the people, fighting to improve Benton Harbor. And if we spend and have all our time focused on fighting each other, then we continue to get study, and nothing gets done. So the CDBG, I'm excited about that. At one point, we had over $1 million just sitting from 2013, 14. And now we've spent down, hopefully we'll get that 865,000, that 80%, which will secure money in the future. Because if we had not done what we said we were going to do, and it was approved by this body, and it was tough questions, it went through planning economic development, but look at where we are now, working together, because we could not be at this point if we had not come to a resolution to get that money spent. The May 10th, May 11th cleanup is getting a lot of traction on Facebook. People sharing it, people throwing out ideas. Industrial sanitation, even, you know, the city would sponsor the trip to the landfill, which is about $300-400, and they would just go around the city just picking up couches, picking up mattresses and other things that they can't get on the regular route. So that's something that this body can possibly come together on, and we can expend hopefully a few hundred of thousand where we can just go around and just get stuff, along with the effort led by our first ward commissioner, Commissioner Henderson, in cleaning up on May 10th and May 11th. City income tax, we're continuously collecting, get the word out. April 30th is the deadline. Hopefully by that time we'll be able to report some numbers that we have never been able to do before. And I know you're leaving, Commissioner Adams, but you know, through your committee as a legislative chairman, that came through for the second time, and it was passed. So again, I want to just say, team effort. I happen to believe that we have a good team. I think that we just have to find better ways to communicate and work with one another. The doors are not being beaten down, maybe because the people feel like, in all, we are doing some good things and moving the city forward. So with that being said, I'd like to thank the staff and thank the residents, last but not least, for coming out tonight. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Commissioner Harrelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Isom?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats?
Yeah.
Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson? Mayor Mohammed?
Yes.
Motion carries.